TCU adds a speedy slot wide receiver and an athletic safety for the 2025 class. Sonny Dykes and his staff continuing to do work on the recruiting trail. We'll talk about that and more next on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. We've talked a lot over the last few weeks because recruiting has been heating up, as Gary Patterson used to say. That was always his phrase on social media when the Frogs would land a commit. Sonny Dykes has taken a new approach to that, and TCU's done a really good job lately of identifying and getting talent on the recruiting trail. Currently, according to 247 Sports, they have the 14th ranked class in the nation for 2025, and they added 2 more commits over the weekend after a number of big-name official visitors were on campus. One of those players, speedy wide receiver Dane Jones. Dane Jones is from Bridgepoint High School in Missouri City, Texas. He is coming off a really good season where he had over 800 yards receiving and a number of touchdowns, did some really special things for that high school last season. So his sophomore year, he had 34 catches for 488 yards and 4 scores. As a junior, he hauled in 50 receptions, 825 yards, and 13 touchdowns. He's a third wide receiver in this class, joining Ed Small and Chance Abels. He's a 3-star prospect, according to 247 Sports, a 4-star prospect, according to the Rivals database. And watching his huddle tape, I think the first thing that stands out is you just see some great speed, a really good ability to get a free release off the line of scrimmage, just beat corners with that first quick step, get to the outside. And also for a smaller wide receiver, I mean, you saw the ability to make some contested catches. There were a number of plays on that highlight reel where he's catching the ball over his shoulder with 2 defenders kind of draped all over him, or somebody's running stride for stride with him and he's able to go up and get the ball in a 1-for-1 situation. So that's encouraging. From a measurable standpoint, 5'11", 170 pounds. He had a bunch of offers: Boston College, Arizona State, Baylor, Florida, and many others. He ran track at Shadow Creek. He also, I'm sure, is running track at Ridgepoint as well. Had a really productive season last year, and this seems like a good fit for TCU and what they're doing. Of course, they're trying to build this class and this offense, especially around Ty Hawkins, who's been the guy who's been committed since a couple summers ago as their QB. One interesting thing about this, I wonder if they go add one more kind of prototypical outside big body type of wide receiver, because at the moment you got Dane Jones, who's 5'11". They also have Ed Small from Anderson High School in Austin, who it says he stands at 5'10", 205. Now, I remember when I did a video about his commitment, somebody from Anderson, like the Anderson recruiting staff, in high schools now they have kind of their own recruiting coordinators and booster clubs and that type of thing. They reach out to me and they're like, actually, we think he's officially 6 feet tall. So maybe I'm underselling that a little bit, but both Ed Small and Dane Jones seem like your typical kind of inside slot wide receivers. And I was thinking today, TCU's had a really good run, and maybe people who have been following the Frogs for longer than me can fill in some of the gaps here too. But of that type of wide receiver. I mean, they've had great wide receivers through the years, obviously Quentin Johnston, Josh Doxson, Jalen Rager, the list goes on. Josh Boyce, I'm going to forget somebody, so I won't continue to name all the great outside wide receivers through the years. But from that slot position, I mean, Tay Barber and Darius Davis were those guys for a number of seasons. J.P. Richardson this past year was great. I think JoJo Earl, players like Major Everhart are going to have a chance to step up this upcoming year. Des White, Kavontae Turpin, obviously, who's gone on to find a nice little niche with the Cowboys. You go back to like Jeremy Curley, a dude like Ty Slanina, Deontay Gray. That 2014, 2015 receiving room was just absolutely loaded. I could go on a tangent on that for a while, but there's always been somebody, and Jalen Rager was kind of this mold too, even though he became more of an alpha and somebody that they put on the outside, but that was just shifty and fast and effective in the return game, and could also get yards after the catch and could be a threat down the seam over the middle of the field. So really encouraged to see that they're continuing that tradition, I guess you could say, by landing someone like Dane Jones, who will be going into his senior year. I think this is a great pickup and seems like he's going to be a good fit for the Frogs. So Dane Jones, inside wide receiver, who's getting ready for his senior year at Ridgepoint High School there in Missouri City. He commits to TCU and had a pretty extensive offer list. It's highly rated. Frogs doing a good job of identifying talent, getting them on campus, and then landing them once they're there. Another player that they got a commitment from over the weekend, Joseph Albright, who plays at Westfield in the Houston area. Joseph's 5'10", 160 pounds. And the thing that stands out just immediately when you watch his tape and see him play is this is a dude that has outstanding athleticism. With Andy Avalos' defense, we've discussed the need and really the requirement to have guys that can play in different spots, right? You want some position flex. You want players that can come down in the box but can also play in coverage. Albright, to me, seems more like your prototypical like center field playing in the back safety. Another player they landed recently, Julius Sims, when you watched him, they kind of moved him all around the field. You know, you had those moments where he actually played some corner at times, but there were definitely moments where he was in your kind of prototypical safety role where you're in coverage on the back end of the defense. But there were also times, whether it was goal line situations, you know, when the offense was in a heavy set, where he was coming down towards the line of scrimmage and having to play almost kind of like a linebacker. Don't see that as much with Westfield, but he had a super productive season as a junior, Joseph Albright, who played at Westfield. He, as a junior, he recorded 82 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, an INT, and a forced fumble, and had 9 pass breakups. Also got reps in the return game and had some limited offensive snaps. So they're moving him all over the field, even on offense, even as somebody who can return the ball. I saw a highlight where he made a pick in the end zone and then took it the distance all the way to the house. So that ability to go sideline to sideline, make tackles, be someone who can kind of be a quarterback for you with that part of the defense is super beneficial. So Joseph Albright, the safety from Westfield, he commits to the Frogs as well. And again, he stands at 5'10", 160, had over 80 tackles last year, had some tackles for loss, had a forced fumble, had a pick, and 9 pass breakups. So did a good job of surveying and covering, a large area of the football field this past season. And that's another thing that we've seen with the change in defensive scheme is just they're getting guys who are athletes, who are, plus with their athleticism and their ability to get after the quarterback, to make plays behind the line of scrimmage, make those splash plays that every defense is looking for. So another good commitment there. He joins Julius Sims as one of the 2 defensive back commits for this 2025 class so far. They also had Micah Strickland on campus, the cornerback from Brownsboro. His teammate Jakyle Baker, wide receiver, was part of that 2024 class. Micah's a 4-star prospect. They have no corners in this class currently. So that's a position of need to kind of fill this out. And I think that hopefully he's going to be a Frog, and that would be another big addition to this 2025 class as well, and would be another blue chip player that they could add to the roster. Another thing that's interesting about the way they're going about this, they've already got 18 commits. I think by the time the season starts, we'd be looking at 2021 commits total, which would be a pretty big number. Now you're always going to have most likely 1 or 2 guys that decide they want to leave, or maybe the coaching staff says, hey, actually, I think we need to go a different direction. But it definitely feels like they've tried to get this thing wrapped up for the most part in the summer. And that's a good strategy with, the way the timeline works nowadays with early signing day. A lot of these guys like to make these decisions before their senior season starts just so they don't have to worry about it too much and be real distracted. They can just actually go out there and play high school football. But also teams like to have a pretty good idea of who they're bringing in because it can help with, okay, what are you going to do in the portal? And also just kind of gives you that peace of mind that you don't have to necessarily – recruiting is a 365-day job, but maybe during the season you can just focus on, okay, we got some priority targets, whether that's a position need or just players that we think if we can land them, that would be a huge boost to the class, and we can dedicate a lot of our resources towards that, and also just kind of maintaining the relationships we already have with our current commits. And then you're not just constantly evaluating and chasing after players during the year. Another headline I saw over the weekend, according to Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports, Ty Hawkins was on campus this past weekend as well, the quarterback commit for TCU. And he said they had a really good time. He said he's locked in. Now, recruiting's still happening for him. I mean, Oregon has been very active in trying to land him for this class. They already have a QB in the fold for 2025 and Akili Smith Jr. And then SMU, since they lost Keelan Russell to Alabama, they're trying to kind of get back in contact with him. I know he had a visit over, I think it was like a midweek visit with the Ponies. And we're probably going to hear those overtures throughout a lot of the year. I know with Elite 11, I think you mentioned Florida was another school that's been pretty active in talking to him. But TCU seems to have a really rock-solid relationship with Ty. And you can only control what you can control. So I feel like they've done a good job of making him feel like he's a priority, that they're trying to build this thing around him. And, you know, Dane Jones, another good addition. You want to have as many weapons as possible for him on the offensive side of the ball, so that he knows, like, hey, this is a place where you can come in and make plays. And that's going to be a fierce battle when he gets on campus, depending on what's going on with Josh Hoover. But Hoover, Haas Haney, and then Ty Hawkins, those are going to be some good quarterback battles through the years. And hopefully, you know, we'll see how it all shakes out with who wins these competitions and what happens to the guys that are the backups. But I really like the priority TCU has made of trying to, you know, get blue chip QBs in here in each class. They kind of whiffed in, I guess it was 2023, but since then they've done a nice job over the past two recruiting classes of making that a priority for the team moving forward. When we come back, we're doing a preview of a new Big 12 opponent tomorrow. And so we'll talk about where they might stand in the pecking order and what the new Big 12 is going to look like. That's coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. FanDuel. I talk to you about FanDuel a lot because they're one of our great sponsors. They've been super loyal to us. I know you love sports. You love them so much you never want to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we have fewer games. And the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets you keep it going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. The summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com. They also have their really handy app that's easy to use as well. FanDuel.com/lockedon. NBA playoffs are wrapped up. You know, we're in the kind of dead season where we're waiting for the NFL and college football, but Major League Baseball still going on. And FanDuel has great deals, great promotions all summer long. FanDuel.com/lockedon or the FanDuel app. They're a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So I'll be talking to JT Wiskell tomorrow, who hosts Locked On Utes, the Utah Utes podcast, as the Frogs will renew another Mountain West rivalry this upcoming season. You know, last year they renewed that rivalry with BYU. That might have been the best game of the year for TCU. It's definitely the most complete game they played all season. I guess either that or that win against Baylor. But it was somewhat unexpected, even though they were slight favorites. I think simply because they were the home team in a game where those two teams were pretty even. But Josh Hoover's first career start, and they put up a ton of points. They win that game 44-11. Utah's a different beast, though. They've won the Pac-12. They didn't win it last year, but they won 2 years in a row before that. And I'll tell you what, man, it's been interesting to watch. I want to get JT's thoughts on this because Utah fans are extremely confident. And I understand, I mean, that's a great program that Kyle Whittingham has built. I think they're very similar to what Kansas State's done as far as being physical. I feel like they're a better defensive team than Kansas State, and that's really where, you know, they hang their hat. But they're a good football team. They're super consistent. They have a high floor, meaning like they're not going to completely tank out and be bad. Even last year without Cam Rising, who was out for the entire season, they found a way to still be competitive. And I was looking at their schedule, and it's pretty manageable. I mean, honestly, for a first season in the Big 12, they start the year with Southern Utah, their other non-conference games against Utah State, and then they get Baylor early in the season. They go on the road to Oklahoma State in late September, which will be a tough game. They follow that with a home game against Arizona, so that's a tough stretch. But then other than that, I mean, they get TCU at home on October 19th. That BYU-Utah rivalry gets renewed in early November. They play Colorado on the road in late November. They get Iowa State at home, and they get UCF at home. But looking at some season predictions, I saw one Utah fan site had them going 11-1, which I think is a little rich, but I understand the confidence, just kind of going game by game. Somebody asked me the other day, I was on the radio, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. And they were like, who do you see as becoming kind of the new standard of the Big 12? And this has been a question that's been cycled around for the last couple of years. And I know the 10-12 network, which is a podcast network that covers Big 12 sports, they've been pretty adamant, or I guess Philip, their kind of leader, has been pretty adamant about like, hey, he thinks the way this is going to shake out is year over year, you're just going to see different teams step up and be good. You won't see the dominant run that we saw from Oklahoma for a long time. You'll have, just each and every season, like you'll have teams that are consistently good, but the championship contenders are going to change on an almost yearly basis, which in some ways I think that could be really fun for the league, just from a competitiveness standpoint. I do wonder what that means for like the brand if you don't have big flagship programs kind of carrying the torch. But it's a fascinating question because I think TCU has a great argument. They have the resources. They have a good coaching staff. And they've shown that they can win at a high level. The issue for the Frogs has just been consistency. And that's why I think this year is super important for Sonny Dykes in just showing like, hey, we can put a quality product out there year in and year out. It's not, we go 11-1 or 12-0, and then we're suddenly 5-7 again. We have a team that can be 8-4 or 9-3, and even if we don't have all our ducks in a row and maybe not a super experienced roster, we can still find a way to win ball games at a high level. TCU hasn't been able to do that really at the end of the Gary Patterson era, and then last year was not a great year following what was an incredible run, winning a playoff game and going to the national championship. But I think TCU has a great argument. I feel like Oklahoma State has to have some positivity around that program because Mike Gundy has shown that while he's not putting up Big 12 championship trophies, like he's able to get teams that can consistently kind of overachieve to a certain extent. And last year, everybody sort of counted them out and thought they've gone in the tank. And then because of a favorable schedule and I believe just a commitment to playing complementary football, they end up making it to the Big 12 title game. Utah is, I know, excited. I'm not like, I think Arizona can be a good team. I don't know if they'll be able to consistently put out, the product that they did last year, especially since their coach left for Washington. But Utah is one of those schools that has to feel good about where they're at as a program and just what they can do moving forward. So I'm excited to talk to JT about just getting the rivalry going again between TCU and Utah, those schools going at it, and where he thinks they fit in. Because Cam Rising, when he hits the field in that opener against Southern Utah, it'll be over 600 days since he's taken a snap. So that's a long layoff. And, I mean, even for a super experienced guy who's been around for a long time because of COVID eligibility and everything else, that's a lot of rust to knock off and immediately step up and play at a high level. So, yeah, Utah preview tomorrow on Locked On Horned Frogs. That'll be fun. It'll be fun to get to know him a little bit, and we'll try to do some more of those before the season starts against some of the Frogs' opponents for the upcoming year as they get ready to try to have a bounce-back season. And Josh Hoover leads the team into a new year against Stanford on a Friday night here in a few months. We're already almost to the end of June, so we're getting there, guys. Like, we're getting close to football happening again. We'll be in August before you know it, just about 30 100 plus degree days in the state of Texas before we can get there. When we come back, we will get some audience reaction. We'll talk a little baseball and wrap things up. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. If you need a part for your vehicle, if you need to replace something, or you're just looking to level up your vehicle to peak performance, use eBay Motors. They have millions of parts for your MVP, and you can win every time with parts that fit your ride. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what drives a winning formula. It's also what drives your car, and you want to keep your car alive and at maximum capacity. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your ride. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And they also have that eBay Guaranteed Fit program where you can put the make and model of your car in the system, you put the part in the cart, and they will tell you whether or not it's the right fit for your vehicle. Millions of parts for your MVP. ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. eBay Motors, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Good baseball game last night. Tennessee Volunteers, former TCU assistant coach Tony Vitello, he wins a national title. They take down Texas A&M 6-5. Jim Schlossnagle still looking for that elusive first title. Some interesting rumors around the Texas job. So David Pierce was officially fired yesterday, which honestly, there's been so much chatter around that coaching position for the past few weeks that I thought he was already fired. I just totally missed that he was still on staff until as of yesterday when he was officially let go. But David Pierce, they asked him to move on. And this would be insane to me, but there are rumors going around that Jim Schlossnagle is a candidate for that job. He was asked about this after the game, and he got pretty defensive about it, which, I mean, understandable. Like, they just lost a national championship. I get why he doesn't want to get that question, but, I mean, the question also had to be asked. But he basically said he left his family to come to Texas A&M. This is where he wants to be long term. But he didn't really outright deny it. He kind of just talked around it. He talked strongly about it, though. So we'll see what happens. The Texas job is a great baseball job, but that would be insane to lose a national title game and then just immediately go to your rival and start building over there. That would be crazy. But that's been out there. At least there's some chatter about it, and so we'll see what happens. TCU baseball has been very quiet so far on the transfer portal front, not really adding a ton of names. They did add, if you missed it, they added an infielder from Washington State, Cole Kramer. He hit .345 last year with 3 home runs. Not somebody that showed a ton of power, but drove the ball over the field and had a lot of doubles and, just hit really well for a player in his first season in Power 5. They also added Colton Griffin from Stephen F. Austin, who last year hit .303 with 5 homers and 22 RBIs. So, again, a super productive hitter, but not a lot of pop. Bill Mosiello coming over from Ohio State. I wonder if they'll be in the mix for some players on that team since he's making the jump back to TCU and settling in again with his family. I think the main thing is you just need more threatening bats in this lineup. Like last year, especially once Peyton Tolle kind of phased himself out of hitting and was just a pitcher, there just wasn't a lot of power. And overall, the team struggled to score. They couldn't really manufacture runs, and they had issues driving in runs as well. But Cole Kramer and Colton Griffin, so far, the names to know as far as the transfer portal goes, and we'll keep an eye on where TCU baseball goes next and what they do as they try to bounce back from what was a rough season where they ended up missing the tournament. We'll be back tomorrow with JT Wiskell from Locked On Utes. It's the Locked On Horned Frogs, your team. We do it here every day.